we see, customers actually getting a hang of it in terms of, getting hold of information and obviously putting out information which can influence other, people to, get influenced to a certain extent by the views and the, let's say, the content which users actually put out. Now, there are three assessment criteria. So we'll be looking at importance of social media, we'll be looking at impact of social media, and then look at how social media sites can influence tourism activity. So nicely set in with regards to three aspects. First, understanding social media, then the impact of social media, and then how it influences, tourism, or how it influences consumer behavior, let me put it this way, with regards to the tourism industry. So let's start with the discussion on Learning Outcome 3, and I've got a few slides that I've prepared again, and these would typically give us a bit of a steer in terms of what we are looking at with regards to, the impact of social media. Now, a couple of things before we start. Obviously, when we look at the indicative content, there's not much given, but what I've done is I've augmented some part of that by looking into what are the various aspects that we need to look at covering when we talk about, social media. So we will be looking at a bit of, platforms for information communication and technology, which are now more or less used for B2B, which is B2B is business to business. And when we look at B2C, which is business to consumer communication. There is obviously an emergence of devices which allow us to look at virtual reality and metaverse from Facebook, and how these kind of let's say functionalities are essentially coming into the tourism sector. So I've put some additional slides towards the end, which will give you some idea in terms of what XR, AR, and VR are. Virtual reality, obviously augmented reality, and then we also talk about the concept of XR, which is primarily related to the spatial computing aspect of it. So when we do talk about these three terms, they are obviously looking at becoming quite synonymous with how people look at now their aliases, their avatars, or they have some sort of a, let's say, the extended reality, which is in some sort of, they have an online presence, and they have a presence which is based on aliases and different avatars, which you are able to create using some of the let's say features which providers are now getting into, things like Facebook and Apple in particular. We look at the concept of metaverse. Obviously, this is again something which is becoming important. A lot of companies today have Facebook pages, and a lot of companies have social media marketing, very hectic activity on social media marketing. We will look at some part of this, and then bits and pieces which are traditional marketing and how they are being dovetailed into and using the technological tools to be able to reach out to consumers and get their message out with regards to online distribution, digital marketing, destination management systems, or DMSs as we call them. So there are some destinations in the world which are typically only based on tourism. We look at Maldives in particular as an example, or as a case study, we look at Bahamas. We look at Dubai to a certain extent. We look at Macau, which is off the shore of Hong Kong. So there are certain destinations in the world which basically are their ecosystems, their economies, their GDPs are predominantly based on tourism and tourism-related activities. So those are called as destination, or tourism destinations essentially. And when sometimes things like a new Disney World, when it comes up, or for example, if some of these resorts which come up, which is primarily going to be based on the aspect of promoting and deriving revenue from tourism and tourism alone, then in such cases those destinations are called tourism destinations. And then the concept that revolves around the whole aspect of how that destination is marketed and obviously positioned in front of the consumers, that would be termed as destination marketing. And then the systems around it, which is in terms of events, marketing engine, sales engine, and anything which is to do with how they promote the location, would typically all fall under what are called DMS. And then we have smart destinations. So when we do talk about smart destinations, this is again an upcoming concept in tourism, wherein we do talk about things like here, I would say the main aspect of implementation of tourism is to look at implementing solutions. And when we look at solutions, these solutions would allow the users to have, a better experience in terms of whatever they want to do as an activity within a particular city. So when we look at some of the European cities in particular, which are being developed as European capital of culture and tourism for the year and things like that. That is where you would generally see this concept of smart tourism being promoted, because tourism sector was hard hit during the COVID times, and obviously during pandemic, a lot of the infrastructure which was related with tourism and seasonal activities of tourism in certain destinations got affected, and that is where you generally see that in order to revive this industry, a lot of countries and obviously economies started to promote the concept of what is called smart tourism, wherein what they did was they started to promote city breaks or getaways, which were 2 or 3 getaways in conjunction with the budget airlines in order to promote these destinations. And obviously, when we look at some of these destinations in particular, what you are going to see is that here the concept of tourism typically works in the context of promoting a destination, promoting the culture of that location, and also looking at strengthening ties with other cities wherein it allows the city to, over a point of time, develop business and related activities to obviously be able to get sustained revenue from tourism. One of the other things which obviously Smart Destination looks at is that they focus on the concept of accessibility and sustainability. That means these locations would pretty much focus on how the tourism activity can be made more sustainable in regards to things like water conservation, sending less material to landfills, waste management, and obviously looking at ecologically friendly initiatives which allow the let's say the players to basically invest and obviously generate income by using resources more I would say responsibly, and that would be the concept of smart tourism or smart destinations. Now, when we look at the overarching aim of this outcome that we're going to study today, it talks about the impact of social media on tourism. So these are a few clippings that I've put together, which primarily give us a clear idea in terms of what is the role of social media and how social media is actually influencing tourism activity. So on the left, when we see, it says social media influence on travelers. Now, if I look at some of the stats which have been collected through obviously various websites, clearly say that 70% of people update their status on Facebook. So obviously it is related to I would say one of the character traits of humans is to say when you're going to a new location, you check into that location with Facebook, and it basically tells your circle of friends or influencers that you are traveling or you are in a particular location on vacation or business. So this is an activity which a lot of people do, which say I'm here or I'm traveling for this, and that is what they say. Sometimes you also look at that travelers use various social media sites like Google, Twitter, Facebook, and also on these sites they create what is called user-generated content, or UGC, as we would talk about in the later slide. And these contents typically tends to be pictures, blogs, vlogs, that some of them are interested in logging in terms of their experiences and sharing that with their group of friends, colleagues, peers that they have, or social media following that they have on these channels. Then you also look at that a lot of people check into hotels, and obviously when they check into hotels, they check on reviews of that hotel. And obviously when they look at the reviews, they also put on their personal comments with regards to what they are experiencing and how they find the location in terms of stay and obviously the facilities. So there is a context of obviously talking about let's say how they feel the facility is, or the benefits of that facility is when they travel out for either business or leisure activity. And then you would see that sometimes when people also look at reading and obviously consuming content which is coming from social media, they also look at that from a point of view of looking at understanding what other consumers are saying, what could be the savings that they could get. Sometimes you look at promotion of vouchers which are done by companies through social media, and that is to engage with the user directly and obviously solicit business. So in such cases, it has become over the years a norm wherein if you're traveling or if you're a frequent traveler or you take a holiday every year, you sign on to some of these sites and follow some of these sites and users wherein you expect that you would get some offers, discount, and some of the things which are offered by these operators firsthand rather than going through intermediaries. So in most cases, when we look at social media, if I look at going 10 years back, there were questions in the industry that does social media investment, the marketing spend which companies do in tourism hospitality sector, does it give them a return on their investment? Now, that is something which obviously has now been proved beyond doubt that social media provides a good return on investment, and this allows companies, operators, and the various players within this sector to interact directly with the consumer, and that is the most important advantage because the social media and social media sites are interactive. It allows the companies to engage subtly with the consumers in their personal space without infringing and asking for more information, and it allows them to gather perspectives, and obviously then it allows them to run campaigns or promotions which in the short and long run bring them revenue or helps them accomplish brand or market share related targets. So it is now proved beyond doubt that there's a clear return on investment with social media, and that is why you would see that a lot of companies, hotel chains in particular, say Marriott and a couple of other examples that we look at, they heavily advertise throughout the year on social media, and it is vitally important for them to have that presence because sometimes when you look at the ATHE model, which is through which we talk about how awareness and decision making typically happens at the consumer level. So most companies look at deriving attention, with the use of social media. That attention slowly and gradually leads to the creation of interest, and engagement of the customer with the organization then leads to a desire, and desire then leads to an action, wherein at some stage the companies or companies representative can actually pick up the phone, email, or newsletters, or any other form of marketing under digital media to be able to reach out to the consumer directly. So in such cases, the ATHE model works very well with regards to how companies get into or get under the skin of the customers in terms of engaging with them subtly and then slowly and gradually getting their attention, getting in the attention turning into interest, interest turning into desire, and then desire leading to an action, which is where either they end up booking a holiday, buying a service or a product, or in some cases subscribe to that service or product. Now, what we also want to look at on this slide is that what are the various channels through which digital communication can happen. So obviously on the right hand side, what I've done is I put across some of these channels which typically companies use to reach out to consumers with social media or using social media, and where all the presence of social media is. So when we talk about social media essentially, tends to be channels like, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and, essentially anything to do with which, internet and I would say platforms which allow them, when I say them, I mean companies to reach out to consumers. So the most popular ones that we get to see is Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. You have other channels like Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, which have now gained vast popularity. And then there are channels which allow videos or content to be generated and obviously put across, and they would include channels like YouTube, Vimeo, you have Tumblr, you have other channels specifically in the Chinese market where we talk about Weibo, WeChat, and even WhatsApp and Telegram. So there are various ways through which now consumers can be reached. And when we talk about these platforms and channels, this particular table actually nicely summarizes what are the forms of communication which the companies are able to do using some of these channels. So it could be websites, it could be social media, it could be mobile marketing, it could be internet-specific ads and videos. It could be display adverts, which are like banner advertising or, leaderboard banners or headline banners on websites. It could be microsites, which could be sites which are created on the main website. But when you look at social media sites like Facebook and others, they are also considered microsites. And obviously, when they look at doing paid advertising, whether it's pay-per-click or Google search AdWords and things like that, would typically be all covered under the various forms of advertising. Now, on the left-hand side of this table, what I've done is I've put across a model, which obviously, as per research, has been tested in hypothesis, and that basically says that social media marketing does have an influence on how companies are perceived, their brand. They can obviously look at seeing a reflection, an increase or decrease in their market share, and obviously gives them the ability to directly interact with the consumer with the desired products that they want to position. So it helps in differentiated marketing, going across different sets of consumers when they look at tourism. So tourism could be, people traveling at the age of, as kids, traveling with parents at the age of 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, and up to the age of, 70 or 80 people travel. And that is where the social media marketing essentially helps to segment the customer groups in various, age groups. And that allows the companies to send across targeted messaging to its consumers. So there is a lot of focus primarily to understand behavior, and consumer behavior part of it is important in the context of social media for the companies to understand that what kind of consumers they are going to go after, what is the attitude, behavior, and let's say preferences they have, and then tailoring the requirements to meet the preferences would essentially give them success. And that is where the whole concept of this digital media or social media marketing comes into play when we talk about the impact of social media. So when we look at the ATHE model, there's a specific model which can be adapted, to the tourism and hospitality industry. So obviously we look at this approver, guider, supporter, and need generator kind of a model wherein the companies try and understand the consumer habits, and when they understand the consumer habits, they push information across to either create a direct impact or an indirect impact, and that leads to, at some stage, the desire and leads to obviously interest, attention, desire, and then an action, which is to purchase the product or service. Now, some of the other aspects that we want to understand why social media marketing is very important. That includes marketing and branding. So obviously, if you are not advertising on social media, or if the presence is not there for a particular company on social media, then it could mean that you are getting left out, and competitors are taking maybe the advantage of their presence, and obviously getting the eyeballs or the contacts that they want to get through this medium and get more consumers. It helps in brand building and reputation management. So a lot of surveys, a lot of reviews, a lot of video blogs or blogging, which typically tends to happen. And when you look at influencers, the company looks at endorsers, influencers, brand ambassadors. It basically is to try and promote the brand itself and the products and services that brand offers. And what they tend to do is tend to subtly engage with its consumers in an impersonal fashion through the aspect of social media. So obviously it helps companies to look at increasing visibility in terms of their brand and obviously their reputation. And obviously in some cases, it also looks at influencer partnerships. So a lot of these companies look at endorsers, influencers, which have large following in terms of Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. What they would do is engage with them and ask them to become brand ambassadors or endorsers, and that would allow them to blog about or explain their experiences when they've traveled or had experiences, and this tends to create a positive attitude of consumers towards that product or brand or service. So you have a lot of these travel editors, you have a lot of these programs which are run on TVs and series which are run wherein people would go in and obviously shoot a particular destination and then provide an inside out first scoop on how and what are the best places to go and visit in that particular destination. When they create these videos, a lot of companies like Expedia, Bookings, Trivago, these are some of the operators which typically endorse and obviously advertise and provide sponsorships essentially for them to be able to cover and try and provide an unbiased view of that destination or what kind of activity tourists can do in that destination, which tends to create influence and obviously at some stage a desire for people to buy that service. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that a lot of this activity is based on the fact that companies need to understand consumer behavior and their decision making process. Now, if the organization like Marriott knows that, say, for example, I'm a member of Marriott Hotels, and what tends to happen is that they would understand why I have become a member and what are the destinations I normally visit, how or what is the frequency of visits that I do in those destinations. And then in those destinations, Marriott has various properties. So what they will try and do is position those properties in those destinations so that they're able to get business when I'm traveling. And then the idea of understanding that as a consumer, I have a family, I have kids. So some of the packages, some of the references, or some of the information that they will send across through newsletters, pamphlets, or leaflets or flyers through the post would essentially be related to having a family-filled holiday or a holiday which will be designed for the family. So what they would do is understand the demographics of where I come from, my education, my literacy level, look at my income, obviously look at the title, and try and gather as much information as possible so that they can actually put create a segmentation of consumers within their database, which would allow them to essentially then send across communication which is tailored to the requirements of the consumer. And then they would also understand how the decision making process happens. So when you look at making a decision to go on a holiday which is a premium holiday, or book a holiday for a certain number of days beyond what they have seen in their previous history or from their previous records, like if you take short holidays for 3 days, and if you have a long holiday for 7 days, but you are now making an inquiry for a holiday which could be 2 weeks, then in such cases they would want to understand who are the decision makers and things like that. So sometimes we say, oh no, it is being influenced by my missus. So what they would then tend to do is understand, okay, there are two decision makers on this, and helping them to understand by asking these questions certainly would allow them to send more communication or more tailored communication across. And sometimes you see that these decisions in families are made more by the partner or your spouse rather than yourself. So in such cases, the communication is oriented towards them. So understanding consumer behavior, what makes them tick, what are the preferences, what are their requirements, and what is the decision-making process helps the companies to tailor these requirements. And this is done through various mediums. So they will do traditional marketing, which is mailer marketing, or marketing which is normally sent as catalogs once in a year to tell them, okay, these are the best holiday destinations of 2025. Why don't you book early, or book early to get discounts, things like that. But over a point in time, throughout the course of the year, there'll be newsletters, text messages, subtle discount offers sent via email, and also maybe an occasional phone call from the relationship manager to basically look at what is the situation and when are you looking at booking, or what are we planning this year. Will be all set of activities which typically tend to happen through the context of understanding consumer behavior and obviously the decision making process. Now, social media also to a certain extent allows information to be passed in real time in terms of updates. So if you tweet, that is most up-to-date information that you're tweeting about a location, hotel, or when you check in through Facebook, check-in status, that gives most customers or influencers or people who are following you or a part of your circle the most up-to-date information. And this tends to be a case in point wherein a lot of companies today, if they are providing services, provide data in real time through Twitter updates. So give you an example, server management companies or companies which are ISPs, internet service providers, if their service is down, they would probably put out, and they would not put out an email, they will not probably send out an alert, but they would send out an alert or a tweet through Twitter or X now, which will basically tell them, okay, our services are down for a couple of minutes and the engineers are working on it. As soon as it is up, you get another update. And a couple of minutes down the line, once the services go back up, you are able to essentially get that update straight away in real time saying that now services are back to normal. So there are lots and lots of areas through which social media can help companies reach out to customers, and this is what most companies are looking at doing. Now, when we talk about customer engagement and service, this also is a useful aspect which social media helps in promoting, because here you are able to have a direct communication. Look at the difference between, if I give you an example, that if I have to send an email to a customer and you haven't spoken to that customer before, then it looks like cold calling because you haven't had any interaction with the customer. And what you do is you're sending an unsolicited email or some sort of a communication to the customer when you have a call center calling you on the phone and they haven't taken permission or haven't spoken to you earlier, or the company they're calling on their behalf hasn't solicited any business from you before. This process would be seen as what is called cold calling, and some customers might not like this approach. But when I look at this from a point of view of social media, what you're going to see is that social media allows companies to interact with customers in their personal space, because they are either following the page, they've signed up to the updates, they've subscribed to the newsletter, or some sort of interaction they've had with the service, which gives them the ability to be able to get back to you with information or send information to you. So sometimes when you get an email and you have never signed up to the email, you unsubscribe, and obviously they ask for a reason: too many emails, not useful for me, or I'm not interested, or I've never signed up, and it could be others. So sometimes customers take up a reason that I've never signed up to this email because that database has been collected from various sites wherein you have clicked on consent or accept all to cookies, and that data has then been shared and sold by companies to various providers. So customer engagement and service part of you can also happen through social media, and this is where brands essentially allow customers to interact with them through the social page, subscribe to the page, or get updates, or say yes to the newsletters. And once that has been done, it opens up a channel of direct communication which can be done through these platforms to customers. One of the other concepts that you have to understand, and I'm pretty sure that you are aware of, is what is called user-generated content. Now, user-generated content, when we look at this, came about, in the early 2000s, when some of the e-commerce sites and obviously the social media proliferation of social media allowed users to start generating content and responding back, to certain aspects of what has been, raised. So when we look at, essentially, what do you call the concept of user-generated content? This is something which basically allows customers to create content. Now, with mobile phones, smartphones becoming available from 2007, 2008, and earlier it used to be just Blackberries, which was keypad-based phone. But when Apple introduced the iPhone and Galaxy and other phones started to come into the market, what it allowed the smartphone to do is basically become a camera, become a platform wherein you could send and receive emails. You could have applications on your phone which could allow you to interact and create social media messaging. And at some stage, it also allowed you to consume a lot of different types of content, which is voice, audio, video, images, and content which is coming in through emails and other bits. Now, when we look at this particular concept of how devices over the years have allowed you to consume, create, and disseminate content from mobile phones, or I would say, let's say the digital devices, which could be an ebook, a reader, a tablet, a mobile phone, a gaming console, and this has allowed users to create what is called content. And this is no longer the domain of PCs or laptops or other complex machines, which were the only devices that allowed you to connect to the internet. So after 2000, I would say, from the coming in of Facebook, and after 2008 or 9, when we look at the creation of content which consumers can do very quickly using these devices, is now termed as user-generated content. And this content can be in various formats: images, videos, audios, text, sending enough text messaging. You had pages and mobile phones up early in the 90s and early 2000s. But if you see, pager was a one-way form of communication. You could send a text of 130 characters and that's it. But now with the phones, you can send and receive text messages, and you are able to send images and video even in text messages. And this allows users to post content online by aggregation through various platforms or applications, and that is why this is called the user-generated content. And this has become important, for consumers right now, and this has also become important for companies right now. Now, crisis management, as I gave you an example, sometimes businesses, if they want to do information in terms of dissemination for crisis management, like I gave you an example of an ISP services being down for a couple of minutes, they would normally do that through the use of social media. Now, there are operational improvements which also social media is able to do. So in such cases, what you are generally going to see is that, essentially, collection of data, analysis of this data will also give business insights to consumers. And in such cases, what will happen is that companies would be able to mine this data to be able to come out with meaningful reports and knowledgeable information, which will also allow them to intelligently market their products and services to consumers. On the other hand, it allows them to collect customer feedback pretty much on the go. So if you look at a couple of years back, and even today, if you check out our hotels or go to any sort of a service that you take at airlines and other places, what they will do is normally serve you a customer questionnaire. That questionnaire you will fill in, you'll drop into the box. A couple of weeks down the line, once a week or once a month, the box will be emptied, the data will be scanned, and then the inputs which have been gathered from that data scan would then be put into the system, and somebody would then generate a report, and that report would then be analyzed to look at what data has been collected in terms of customer feedback. Now, today that can be done on the fly using social media, because you could serve the customer a form on social media like Google Forms or data forms, and that allows the customers to instantly react and fill those forms, and then it can be electronically tabulated by the system in the background to give you insights which are required for the purposes of obviously getting the insights from that. And that is where operational improvements have happened, because it saves time, effort, money, and obviously some of these things have now become automated. You'll also look at the concept of enhanced collaboration. Now, when we look at enhanced collaboration, what we mean by that in that context is that when generally we look at any set of activities which tend to happen within this particular sector, what you are going to see is that there are lots of different operators and players which are playing, in this particular space. Now, when I look at this particular space, and as I mentioned, when you look at operators, you have lots of different players who are essentially working together, sharing data and collaborating to be able to get across to the same customers. Now, it is in the interest of, say, for example, airlines, and if I give you an example here of Jet2 Holidays, you generally see, Jet2 also runs their own airline. You look at Thomas Cook Holidays, they also run their own airlines and aircraft. And what they see is an advantage here, that if they collaborate and obviously have some of these services in-house, then it allows them to bring in operational efficiency and obviously provide let's say an integrated package to customers. So when you look at these kind of synergies, which typically tend to happen with Ryanair, for example, or EasyJet, for example, tying up with hotels, rental companies, car rental companies, and other tour operators and event activity management companies in certain destinations wherein they fly, and they know that this is a destination predominantly for tourism or for business or leisure reasons, then in such cases, enhanced collaboration brings in benefits both on the side of operational efficiency, revenues, and also saving costs. So in such cases, there is also shared resources which could be used. When you look at airports, certain airlines fly only to certain airports, and in order to look at, say, for example, check-in counters, or when you go in and check in, you would generally see that certain budget airlines would have the same ground staff, and they would have the same counters wherein check-in would happen, and that would allow them to look at working together with other airlines which would operate on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, whereas the other airline would operate on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, but they fly to the same destination. And in such cases, that collaboration helps different stakeholders in the industry to save cost or build on operational efficiency. So there are a lot of aspects to which you would generally see there are areas and avenues through which social media contributes heavily to the tourism and hospitality sector. But if we have to summarize where mostly it helps, and it helps generate meaningful revenue and let's say turnover for the industry. One, it would be under what is called enhanced communication. It would be operational efficiency. It would be reaching out to consumers directly without going through the intermediaries. And in some cases, looking at tangible or intangible benefits like brand building and reputation management, which would be, something which companies would, let's say, single-handedly drive through the use of social media. So in some cases, they know that you wouldn't you wouldn't go on to the X or Facebook platform and book a flight ticket. That will still happen from their website, but the attention desire side of things and action side of things would also have influence when they start engaging with you on different platforms, and that is where social media becomes important. And that is where I think you would generally see the power of the social media being leveraged by companies working within this sector to gain valuable insights, or obviously look at subtle ways of engagement with the customer, which allows them to be bringing a top of the mind recall, and obviously having more eyeball contact with them across various channels, which allows at some stage prospective buyers to become customers or consumers of their products and services. Is that okay? Any questions on this?
No, it's clear.
Okay. Now let's look at some of the assessment criteria. Some part of them will be, I would say, repetitive because we've covered the major concepts of it in discussing the overarching aim of the learning outcome. The first part is looking at importance of social media. Now, need to think of some reasons why this has now become important, and why do you think companies need to have a presence on social media? So if you think of areas like increased visibility, companies looking at engaging with customers through different channels, and looking at driving their qualitative, let's say, benefits or qualitative factors like brand building, positioning their products and services, or positioning and building a recall for their products and services, and also looking at to a certain extent management of reputation when a company becomes quite established and obviously has service or provides services in many different types of many different locations, and also provides many different types of services. So in such cases, you would generally see that the importance of social media or engagement with consumers using social media would become very important, because you would have, how would you interact? So if I look at an example here, without going to very much details of the slides, but just look at an example that, assuming we have, as an online college, we typically have customers in very many different countries. But one of the things that we also have to always look at, just as a parallel example to tourism and management industry, is that we also need to create awareness and obviously visibility of the products and services that we have and that we sell, and that need to be positioned in front of consumers or prospective students or learners, essentially, who would be looking at doing the courses. So in such cases, what are the outlets that we can do promotions with? Number one, for example, we can go and participate in events which happen on ground within that geography or location. You could appoint intermediaries like agents or partners who would promote your service and obviously recruit on your behalf by obviously having an on-ground presence in the cities or locations you want to market. There would be use of some sort of, I would say, maybe, let's say traditional mediums of marketing. If you have a strong on-ground partner, you might do billboard advertising, you might do cable TV advertising, you might go on the TV for a while to launch your product or your brand in that market. That could be an expensive way, but print advertising, above the line advertising, which is radio and TV, could be something that you could do, billboards and other bits. Now, apart from doing all this traditional marketing and reaching out to consumers, what are the other ways through which you'll be able to go? So you'll be able to go into below the line marketing activities like events, catalogs, flyers, postal marketing that companies companies do sometimes by looking at going into postcodes and obviously sending out flyers and other things through the post. There could be regional events that you do, things like road shows or seminars or webinars that you can host. But what are the other ways that you would engage with your consumers? So one of the channels that we look at is the online channels, and online channels could have pay-per-click advertising, social media advertising, Google advertising. You could also have microsites or promotional sites or offers that you run with other competitors or other partners within that geography. And they would be the usages through which you would, or channels through which you'd be able to reach out to consumers. So one such channel which has become very important over the years is because as people get access to the internet, 5.5 or 5.4 billion people have access to the internet. And if you look at people who are on social media, 3.2 billion on Facebook, 700 million on Twitter, and some of the other platforms, if you look at Weibo and TikTok and other channels, they have maybe over in excess of 2-3 billion users. Now, there would be duplication, but at the end of the day, what you also want to do is you don't want to miss out on this particular channel where you can interact directly with the consumer without having to create a lot of noise or obviously going through intermediaries. So social media is becoming important in order to drive tourism activity because you could probably get information about your local tourism destinations from various mediums through newspaper adverts, cable TV advertising and stuff. But when we talk about international tourism, and when companies look at reducing expense, but also want to reach out to thousands and millions of customers for the purposes of, engaging with them, social media is a channel which is very, very, very cost effective. And that is why, importance of social media in this sector is growing. So you look at the visibility these channels provide, right? The number of consumers that you can reach out to or eyeballs that you can reach out through Facebook, Instagram. You look at TikTok, Pinterest, and Twitter and other such channels. Then the engagement and interaction that can happen with these channels when you post an information can be instant, and there could be various forms of interaction and engagement. So if you think of things that you do when you're on a Facebook page, how do you engage? You look at pressing a like, you look at pressing a dislike, you can write a comment, you can post something on it as a counter, as a comment, or as a image, or as an audio, or as a video, and that could be shared across millions, thousands, and millions of users, depending on how many users are signed on to that page, and that can instantly start some sort of a discussion without the company or somebody else interfering with it. Now, there would be moderators on certain channels wherein commenting tends to be moderated, or in some cases, systems or softwares would be used to moderate that content, and that might not go online or get published onto an article or something where you have posted. But in general, and I would say in most cases, when we look at interaction with social media and channels that we use, there is an instant, engagement that can happen with the audience because there are various ways through which they can elicit a response by putting a message on, and that would allow them. When I say them, I mean the companies to be able to build a relationship, to build trust, loyalty, and obviously sometimes when they give out offers, they will say, and I'm sure that you would have read and seen that sometimes when companies create or launch a new product, they say, okay, first 1,000 customers to sign up would get this, or early bird offers available till such and such date, and that allows engagement instantly to happen with consumers. Sometimes they say, okay, if you click like or if you post a comment on it and it gets shortlisted as the best comment of the day, then we'll send you a can or a pack of this as a promotional merchandise to your address and things like that, and that allows the engagement to happen. You look at influencer marketing. This is one of the other bits that when you are on social media, then what you want to do is obviously, generate more eyeballs, more views, and obviously more interactions with consumers. And that is where influencer marketing comes in. There are lots of different types of influencers. So when you look at influencer marketing, and influencer marketing platforms. There are lots of them which are there. And then, what you would want to do is basically look at certain top journalists or media consultants or travel consultants who basically travel, and you would want an endorsement or, some sort of an endorsement from them on their channel or on their in their group or in their following, and that would help you also get more eyeballs and obviously more conversations going with regards to the consumers that you want to go to. So sometimes you would see companies would engage and align with certain types of influencers. So when I look at, for example, travel companies and travel influencers, what you're going to generally see is that there are lots and lots of different type of influencers and marketing campaigns which Airbnb essentially runs, and they're teaming up with influencers. Typically tends to happen because they would want the word of mouth to be essentially used for promoting a particular destination. So when we do look at different types of influencers, they use lots of different types of hashtags. They would use different types of people who would be endorsing their views, or in some cases, let's say, reinforcing their views, and that would be providing a strong PR for that company or for that particular channel or social media. And in such cases, you would see that they would probably get more customers to come in and interact and obviously start to follow them. So you would normally use influencers essentially to increase your following and increase your interaction with consumers. And that is one of the ways why social media is also very important, because a lot of influencers who have millions of followers are always sought after by brands if they have the same philosophy, vision, and mission, and they believe in the same context as what the company does and their ethos. Then they would align with them from a long-term perspective to use them as brand ambassadors or influencers to create more better experiences with an engagement with consumers. You look at user-generated content, and this is something which can be done by consumers directly on social media when they want to interact with different brands. And obviously that can be done in the form of photos, videos, reviews, or, likes and dislikes and, other forms of engagement, which is possible with social media. And one of the most important sites that you look at is TripAdvisor, Yelp. You look at Trustpilot, you look at FIFO, and these are platforms which basically create reviews or collect reviews from customers on different services, and they tend to be both positive and negative. And this allows companies to also look at what consumers think of their brand, and as a result, they then can streamline their communication or align their marketing promotions and tactics to suit and obviously meet the demands of consumers. Real-time feedback, I've already highlighted that social media provides the avenue through which companies can actually create and get real-time feedback on their marketing campaigns and activities. And this tends to happen generally through engaging with consumers through polls. For example, one of the things that social media allows companies to run is polls, and these polls can opinion polls or polls essentially, and they can be used by companies to create and generate interaction with consumers, and that allows them to also get reviews and feedback quite quickly from this particular channel. This is a no-brainer. Obviously social media, you're reaching out to billions of people. Assuming you're able to create that social media campaign, and the channel which is successful, and after investing a few, I would say it could be anywhere between few thousand pounds to millions of pounds, depending on how big the brand is and how big the following they have or want to create. Once that is done, then it allows you to cost effectively reach out to consumers as compared to traditional advertising methods. If I look at running a campaign on Google AdWords, it will cost, you can price and start a campaign for $100, for $1,000, for $10,000, and that will allow you to reach a number of consumers. And mostly on most social media channels, you're able to see if you spend $50 a day, how many consumers can you reach depending on your circle and the number of followers that you have. If you spend $500, how many customers you're able to reach. and how many times your advert or your content will be shown to various customers who are on that similar media with similar preferences. And this tends to be a very, very cost effective medium through which companies can actually reach out to their consumers. So as we see that there is growing importance and obviously a lot of importance now being paid by marketing departments when they look at essentially creating annual budgets. They would set aside a set clear budget for social media because they know very clearly that social media and presence on social media is very important, and it is something which cannot be done away with by these companies, because if they don't have a presence on social media, you're losing out. You're not in the consumer's mind frame for consideration in terms of decision making process, and that is why this has over the years now become a staple part of advertising in every marketing department within tourism and hospitality management sector, or any player which is working within this particular sector. They engage in social media marketing, even if they are not engaging in traditional mediums of marketing. But you would generally see a business starts up, they will create a Facebook page first, create a Twitter account first, have an Instagram account and a TikTok account or a YouTube channel, rather than having something else, because this is a cost-effective way of obviously reaching out to consumers. Is that okay? Any questions on this?
Does celebrity endorsement fall under influencer marketing?
That is correct, yes. So one of the bits that you would, celebrity endorsement as a word, as a term, I would say, would be traditionally under what is called, traditional mediums of advertising. But in one way or the other, it is linked to influencer marketing, a term which can be described that when we talk about social media, we're talking about influencers because you want followers, you want subscribes, you want likes. But in the case of celebrity marketing, when we do talk about celebrity marketing and the difference between influencer marketing, you would generally see there is a subtle difference that influencer marketing would essentially be having or helping you to drive more followers, likes, and endorsements through social media. But whereas when you look at celebrity marketing, it will be more of using a face, because the company would also be looking at traditional mediums of advertising, and that is where they would want to look at events related, so that would be on ground presence, essentially, if I say. So if I look at social media, it'll be online, celebrity would be on ground. If I look at influencer marketing, it'll be more followers, likes, and subscribers. When I look at celebrity, it'll be more of brand recall, brand building, and obviously event related marketing, because you're reaching out and you are basically sponsoring or aligning with somebody who has the same ethos and values as regards to the brand, and that would be a longer term association as compared to people who would generally be looking at influencer marketing. You might have different influencers who you might engage with over a point in time, but when you look at a celebrity endorsement, it would generally be a long term prospect and may involve lots of money in terms of involvement, because it would be something seen as an engagement with a brand for a longer duration of time. So slightly different, but yes, in context of traditional marketing, you look at celebrity endorsement or brand ambassadors, but in the case of online marketing, you'll be looking at influencer marketing or influencers. Is that okay?
Yes.
So influencers can come from diverse backgrounds, they can have different interests, and you might use them for different aspects of marketing. But celebrity, you would be probably going to be very clear that this is something which aligns across all the marketing activities. This face or their belief and ethos aligns across all the activities which the brand would do, and that would be for a longer term perspective as compared to influencer marketing. Now, the second one that we want to look at is what is the impact. So in the first one, we understood what is the importance. The second one, we want to look at the impact. Now, one of the main bits that we want to look at is what kind of an impact or effect does social media or presence of social media, and if you hammer information using social media to consumers, what kind of an effect or an impact it has on consumers. Now, one such example that is used as a case study in this context is Iceland, which is an island very close to the Arctic Circle, just above United Kingdom. They focus on the aspect of promoting tourism in Ireland, and they do it very consistently by using social media. And they want this particular destination to be positioned as a destination wherein people come in for, let's say, tourism activity, but with nature in mind, with, volcanoes in mind, with hot water geysers in mind, with rugged terrains in mind, and with, say, for example, wilderness in mind. Now, most of the advertising this country does, or the tourism board of the country does, is primarily through interactive campaigns, influencer partnerships, and content writers, which basically write and create captivating visuals which capture the landscape of Iceland, which is quite beautiful. And that is where the impact of this tends to be subtly felt over a point in time when they derive and get consumers coming to Iceland. And no one comes maybe more than once, but the idea there is to try and get more of new customers to come and visit this particular territory. Now, there are various aspects of how they put this strategy in place. So they use things like, if I have to talk about Iceland and the benefits and the reasons why you should come to Iceland, they would cover that by captivating visual content. That means stunning images, pictures of natural beauty, northern lights in particular, which is a phenomenon wherein the sun rays, gamma rays interact with the ozone layer of the earth, and obviously you get to see the aurora lights, which typically, or northern lights as we call them, which basically is a spectacle to see during certain months of the year. Hot water geysers, glaciers, waterfalls, and obviously volcanic activity. If you want to see that thing firsthand in nature, then captivating visuals are created and obviously collected, and they are posted using social media. Now they also have a lot of social media influences which believe and obviously come from Iceland, or obviously look at seeing Mother Nature and are one with Mother Nature. So they use these influences to essentially engage what is called authentic content or engaging content, which is then posted out through blogs, videos, and obviously different social media channels, which can reach out to consumers when they go out to certain types of outlets wherein they are looking at getting hold of information about a destination or about a particular tourist activity. So influencer partnerships are important for them because they engage with different influencers, which can give a different perspective of why visit Iceland as a country, why come to this country. And they don't link this to one particular individual, but they will go to nature enthusiasts, animal enthusiasts. They'll go to, people who like adventure tourism. They will go across to different forms of influencers which are popular within different channels, and they have the ability to be able to promote. So they might even go across to, say, the photographer community, because they would be interested in, obviously showing the most beautiful landscapes and the features of this country, and that allows them to engage with, audiences of various types across Europe and outside Europe. So social media marketing becomes very important for them because it allows them to run this campaign for years, months, years and years, and then get into the mindset of consumers, through which they are able to, then get consumers to look at booking a holiday. And then all these campaigns are, essentially leading with some sort of a message. They always converge to some sort of a message. And these messages tend to be hard hitting in the sense that they either engage, collect data, answer some queries, and at some stage, let's say, propel you to essentially book a holiday or book a holiday to Iceland. Now, when I talk about the impact of social media, what is the impact? So by looking at this case example or case study of Iceland, what we also want to understand is what is the impact does it have on Iceland as a country which promotes itself as a tourism destination. Now, one of the impacts that it has of running this campaign for years and years right now is that it gets increased tourism activity in the country. That means their tourism activity in 2010, which was 500,000, is increased to 2 million by 2019. So as you can see, sustained engagement through social media and promoting various aspects of it, engaging with different influencers, and positioning the best of Iceland in terms of various aspects of tourism activity in Iceland has led to a 4-time increase of tourism activity for this location. This has also enhanced the reputation of the country as a country which is known now for its natural beauty, apart from Sweden, Norway, and Switzerland in Europe. So a lot of people decide that, okay, I've been to Switzerland a couple of times. Now let's try something different, and then they look at, in this mindset, in this frame of their decision making as an aspect, look at Norway and Iceland, because they say, okay, we're going to a colder location, we're going up north. Why don't we try Iceland, which is an island country and it has so many things to offer? And that has helped social media has helped in enhancing that particular image and positioning of that country as a tourist destination. And obviously, when you look at other aspects that we discussed, things like user-generated content, collecting feedback, real-time information, these are bits which social media is able to allow, let's say, allow avenues and channels through which this information can be sent across or shared effectively without the country's tourism board spending thousands or millions of obviously they spend thousands and millions of euros, but that expense is something which is manageable by the government, because tourism as an activity contributes significantly to the GDP of that country, and that is where they continue to invest, continue to engage, and social media is one of the channels through which they think as a channel allows them to get that value for money, or creates that impact which allows Iceland to be positioned as a tourist destination. And what they have seen with these continuous investments in the way they have tried to advertise and position Iceland, that this has worked over the years and this has increased the activity or in terms of tourist numbers coming to the country. Is that okay?
Yes.
Now, the last assessment criteria we need to look at is analyzing the impact of social media and social media sites on, tourism activity. Now, one of the things that I know, obviously, from experience is that if a lot of these channels also pose challenges to companies when they look at managing their brand reputation. It is so easy that a consumer can essentially, write a negative review or leave a negative comment on their website or on their social media, which can easily and quickly propagate and obviously go across to thousands and millions of consumers. In the olden days, if you look at, this was, although a manual process, paper driven, it was not electronic. And that meant that some of these reviews or comments or negative comments could be suppressed easily by the company or the player or the operator involved if they had collected, say, a negative review or a negative comment. But nowadays, with the availability of social media, people have the ability to put these comments and what they feel and how their interaction has been on different channels. You try and suppress it on one, you delete a tweet, you block the tweet, or disable the visibility of that comment. They can do it on different channels. So it is a positive, it is a bane, it is an advantage, but also it is a bane or a negative to the companies or players which are within the tourism and hospitality industry. And sometimes social media can impact them negatively, which could do away with a lot of followers going away, a lot of brands withdrawing in endorsements, or in some cases influencers withdrawing their endorsements. And last but not the least, it can have a direct impact on the revenues, because their services or the feedback which has been provided by customers are out in the public, and because it is done, it provides an avenue in terms of real-time feedback. This can also be detrimental if it is not controlled in time, or if it is not acted upon time by the management or people involved in that. So it poses both aspects of being good as well as bad for the company. Now, when I look at positive impacts, obviously we've covered some of these. It can be, enhanced marketing efforts, obviously cheaper mediums through which you can reach out to customers. You can increase your brand awareness in terms of, the positive impacts. It can also lead to more customer engagement. It can lead to real-time interactions. And obviously these can be then acted on by the company to promote such activities which can bring more reactions, more subscribers, more followers, more consumers buying their products and services. User-generated content can also be looked at in the positive aspect that it helps in, paid promotions. Sometimes when you look at companies engage in asking influencers or, social media personalities to do paid promotions for them, and that is done through the context of user-generated content. Now, what could be the negative impacts that we want to look at? A negative impact would be managing, a review which has been written out by a customer if they've not had a good experience, or if a staff has misbehaved, it can immediately come across as a negative review, by the customer on any of the social media channels. A negative review can lead to a serious dent in the reputation of that particular establishment if it is not acted upon. And what you see recently now, when I say recently, in the last couple of years, what you see recently now, a lot of different review sites have come up, things like TripAdvisor, you have Trustpilot, you have FIFO, you have lots of other sites which allow user-generated content in the form of reviews, but controlled and moderated by the company. So what you generally see is that there is an option now on these reviews wherein the company personnel can comment on it. And the commenting allows either the review or the concept to be endorsed or rebutted by I would say the company itself. So to give you an example, sometimes if you go onto some of these sites like TripAdvisor and you go across to some of these sites wherein you're able to place reviews, you're generally going to see that I've opened up TripAdvisor, and obviously you see there are lots of reviews which customers are placing when they've been to a particular location, and this tends to influence customers, other customers who are looking at going to the similar destination for holiday or otherwise for visiting for business or leisure activity to choose these locations, which makes which has a direct impact. That means they get more revenue, they get more consumers, and obviously in such cases, having a positive review left by a customer would be good for their brand reputation. Now, what you're able to see also in the reviews is that when you look at, say, for example, opening a particular review, you'll also see commenting, which will be done by customers about what they liked at that particular location. And there would be discussion threads, which typically would be available under these reviews, which customers write. Now, this is something which was not there earlier, but now it allows user-generated content like uploading a photo, writing a review, and then reviews being also answered by the company or that particular location, enforcing and re-endorsing the fact that yes, they like the comment or they agree with that comment, or there's some sort of a subtle commenting which the companies do to say yes, thank you for that review, or thank you for the generous comments, and we appreciate and we look forward to for you to visit again, or things like that. Similarly, when you look at commenting, just as an example, we then also look at commenting on these sites wherein you are able to thank the customer, and this then creates further eyeballs or interactions, as far as the enhancing of reputation is concerned. But here also the disadvantage is that customers can actually filter the reviews on the basis of 1 star, how many such reviews have happened, and if by mistake, sometimes we go across, we see that a lot of customers have said it's an excellent learning, but they've forgotten to actually, click on the stars, and actually this is a 5-star review, but you generally see that, they've just placed 1 star because they haven't realized the star had to be pressed. So in some cases, when you respond back to the customer, you are able to essentially also rebuttal that review. But it can be honestly damaging to the company when we talk about how reputation management can be easily damaged, or easily, if you are a good brand and obviously you have good reviews, how that can be easily damaged, which can be seen with an impact which social media has. Now, in some cases, it also increases sensitivity of customers towards what is being said about that brand. So if you were purchasing something and you read a review which came to your knowledge, you would suddenly hold off that purchase because of the fact that you'll say, hang on, I've just read this review, let me go into a bit more detail. So in some cases, it can influence the decision-making process of the customer as well. Other negative impacts tend to be that if these channels are not monitored over a point in time, they can deteriorate the brand reputation and also the visibility of the brand in the minds of the consumer. And you would also be averse to the fact that because these sites allow reviews to be written, and that is where some of the sites have now started to look at controlled reviews. That means if you are a customer and you have purchased a product or a service, then in that case you are invited to write a review. But if I look at Trustpilot and I go back on it, what you'll see is a Trustpilot site is an open review system. Any customer can go in and place a fake review or a negative review on a particular brand because they are a competition, or whatever reasons you feel, you can go in and do it. But that review can be moderated by the company by placing a comment saying that you're not a customer or whatever, but the review still remains there. Now, there are certain sites which allow controlled and moderated reviews to be left, provided you have been a customer. So you have to be invited to place a review. And in such cases, that allows companies to manage misinformation and fake reviews. And one such site that you typically look at is what is called FIFO. And FIFO is a consumer review collection site, which basically allows customers and companies essentially to collect reviews, but only on the basis that you have been a customer for that particular service, and that allows them to send across an invite to you, and then once you receive the invite, you are able to place a review. But this is an essential service which basically allows consumers to place their reviews or place their thoughts and opinions about a particular product that they have bought, interacted with, or used, and they tend to then provide a more legitimate and let's say a better system of collecting reviews and information from customers. But this could be a negative as far as we are discussing in terms of impact, because it can lead to risk of misinformation and fake reviews if it's an open system or an open ecosystem wherein anybody can come in and place reviews or views and express their views without having to buy a particular service. So there are positive and negative impacts of social media, and that is what you need to understand. And this table actually then summarizes why social media can have and in what ways social media can have a positive impact, in what ways social media can also have a negative impact. Any questions on today's discussion?
So like sites like FIFO, you can't just write any reviews, you have to be invited.
That is correct. So these sites, there are lots of such sites which basically look at, which are called closed ecosystems. So they invite reviews from customers, provided you have been a customer, and that method tends to be through an invitation. But sites like Trustpilot and say TripAdvisor, you are free to go and write reviews without, actually using the product or the service. And in such cases, it can have positive and negative impacts.
Okay, all right.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So that brings us to the end of this particular discussion on Learning Outcome 3. I have put together some slides for additional reading that you can do. As I mentioned, that these are upcoming concepts which social media is also promoting, and these are going to be useful slides to get some information on different aspects which are now being experimented, used in the tourism and hospitality industry. So these are additional slides which I'll ask you to go and read, and there'll be one or two small case studies that I'm going to put up on the on the Moodle along with the presentation. And these case studies would essentially be like white papers which have got published over the years, and they would help you understand the impact of social media in particular, on the tourism and hospitality industry. So just very briefly, bringing this across on Moodle. Just give me 1 second. So this would be something I would say as a bit of additional reading that you can do, for this particular unit. And that would be giving you some more insight into with a case study or like an example to crystallize what we've discussed. So one of the articles that I have uploaded is primarily this one, which is the influence of social media on tourism. This is a case study which was put together by the University of Debrecen, and their students in particular put together this article that if you come in to study at the university, what are the ways through which the benefits of increased student population coming into the location, is influencing the tourism activity for this particular area. So this could be one that you could look at. I have updated, obviously, the the presentation, which has also been uploaded, and that would be along with the copy of the recording that you would see in a minute, which will come up on Moodle.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Brilliant.
All right.
So I'll catch up with you. I think the next session is it next week or is it tomorrow? Give me one second.
No, it's next week. It's
next week. Okay.
Yeah,
so I'll catch up with you next week. Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye for now.